Hi, everyone. This is Camden Busey for Squared Away Life. I want to talk a bit today about more journaling and speak about my journaling history and really also what changed once large language models got good enough and automated enough through agentic systems, harnesses, and tools like Claude Cowork to really unlock some value in my journal. Now, I've kept a journal for many years now, and I did not begin to do that because I thought it would one day become useful by the use or the implementation of some advanced technology. I started because journaling helped me think. I was writing on paper, and it helped me process my day. It helped me work through frustrations, helped me clarify what was actually bothering me, and it put language to things that would otherwise have remained vague. I think assigning words, whether through speech or through writing, assigning words to your experience and thoughts is an important activity. It's a way to metabolize your experience and process it and then derive nutrition from it. Just like when you eat food, you need to metabolize it in order to derive benefit from it. So journaling is a way for me to do that. And it gave me a way to slow down. It gave me a way to reflect and become more deliberate in my life and work. Now, that alone is valuable. It's exceedingly valuable. I encourage you to do that, to write, to journal, even if you never look at those notes and even if no one else ever will. In fact, I think it's important to say that very clearly at the outset, because when people hear me talking about what I'm going to be talking about, they may assume that I'm about to tell you that journaling only became useful once AI entered the picture, but that's not what I mean at all. Journaling mattered and still matters before and apart from the implementation of artificial intelligence. It still matters before AI. The act of writing is itself valuable because writing is part of thinking. I don't think writing is merely the output of thought. I think it actually is a function or a form of thought. Because when you write in a journal, you're not merely recording your life, you're processing it. You're taking what is diffuse, what is emotional, what's half formed or difficult to articulate, and you are giving it shape in words. And that is a form of personal development. It's a form of self-understanding, of growth. It's a way of becoming less reactive and more intentional. Now, for me, journaling became even more valuable, though, once I paired it with a daily review practice. I began reviewing what I had written 1 week ago, 1 month ago, and on the same date every year ago. And that simple habit changed a great deal. It gave continuity to my practice. My journal was no longer just a private place to unload my thoughts in the moment once in a while, but it became a durable record of my life. A history, a record of my patterns, my concerns, and even my development and my growth over time. And that was already enormously helpful. You can read about my habits and my process and my suggestions for how to implement this in your own life by reading my forthcoming book, The Compounding Mind. You can get a free pre-publication copy of that by subscribing to my email newsletter over at squaredawaylife.com. But even with journaling and then with the daily review, something then really surprised me. When I began using an AI assistant to help me with daily processing and planning, it was like rocket fuel. And that was surprising because I had not journaled for that purpose. I was not trying to create training data for a machine, for example. I was trying to think more clearly and to live more deliberately for myself. But once I started bringing an AI assistant into contact with my reflections, I realized that I had been sitting on far more value than I ever knew or ever anticipated. The journal had already been helping me in the moment. But what I did not fully realize was that it was also building context over time. It was creating a record of what kept surfacing in my mind, of what kinds of frustrations kept occurring, of what mattered to me, where I felt tension and where I was feeling scattered or maybe even stuck. And once that material existed in a form that I could review, and once I now then had an assistant that could help me synthesize it, a whole new layer of value became available. And now I want to make an important distinction here, though, that I'm not mainly talking about note-taking in general, though many of the same principles do apply there as well. Research notes, project notes, your strategy documents, meeting notes, all those things have their place. And if you're doing a full-orbed kind of PKM or personal knowledge management system, they're all going to be part of it. But I'm talking right now more specifically about journaling, writing notes as part of a journal or a diary. Journaling is a little different, I think. Journaling is more personal. It's about processing your own thoughts, your own experience, your own inner life. It's not mainly about collecting information from the world, but it's about making sense of yourself within the world. And that's why I think journaling is such an important discipline, especially for thoughtful people who work with ideas. Because if your work depends on judgment and attaining clarity, if it involves writing, teaching, leadership, or synthesis, then you need some trustworthy way of processing your own life and your own thoughts. Otherwise, you're left reacting to whatever is the loudest, whatever is novel, or certainly whatever is most urgent. But a journal gives you a place to think and to assign words to your experience, to put things on the page and process them. And what has become clear to me now is that in the age of AI, that kind of durable thinking becomes even more valuable. Let me put this simply. Now, there are days, lots of days, but there are days when I feel scattered and I have several projects in motion. I have things weighing on me. I know there are important issues that I need to address, but I may not even know where to begin. And on a day like that, journaling helps me get the material out of my head, and I write morning pages. I may do a brain dump. I get into the office and just express everything I can onto the page. I may even dictate these things, whatever's on my mind, into a digital note using a tool like Willow Voice or Whisper or Sync, I think it is. There's several. These dictating tools are great. I use Willow Voice, and when it works, it's amazing. I just talk, and all the notes end up in my Obsidian. And that alone helps. Getting all that stuff recorded is useful. But now, after I've done that work, I can bring those reflections into conversation with an AI assistant that knows about me, knows my plan, my purposes, my goals, etc. And I can ask it to help me make sense of what I have already written. I can ask it what themes keep recurring in my journal. I can ask it what seems to be the real bottleneck in the network of frustrations I'm experiencing. And then I can ask it to help me form a daily plan or a weekly plan based not on an abstraction or my own feelings, but on the actual patterns that are present in my recent reflections. Now, that doesn't mean that AI is thinking for me. It's not replacing my judgment. It's not doing the human work of reflection. It's not telling me who I am or what matters, but it can help me review and synthesize what I have already surfaced in a way that's often faster and broader than I could manage on my own in the same amount of time. And that's why I say that the journal becomes more valuable in the age of AI. It's not at all because AI replaces journaling, but because it helps actualize value that was already present there. Now, I think that matters because many people assume the opposite. They assume that if AI is powerful enough, maybe they no longer need to journal. Maybe they don't need to reflect, or they don't need to keep careful notes about their own life and work. They could just have their tool, their system connect to everything, their emails, their calendar, their task management systems, and then they'll just go ahead and ask their tool later. But here's the important thing. Even as the models continue to advance and get better and better, no matter how good the model is, I think, and no matter how tuned of a system you have, the tool itself does not know you unless you've given it something to work with. It's never going to know what you're feeling unless you express that. It's never going to know what's frustrating you unless you tell it. It does not know what has been weighing on you for the last 2 weeks, for example. It doesn't know what frustrations keep surfacing in your work. It does not know where your priorities and your actual attention are misaligned. It does not know what themes have been developing quietly in your mind over time. But your journal does, because you've expressed those thoughts there. At least your journal contains the raw material by which those things can become visible. And that's why I think journaling is not less important now, but maybe even more important than it ever has been. Now, I should also add that I'm not saying everyone must journal digitally from the start. I do. It helps a lot. But I still value handwriting quite a bit. I mean, I often write by hand in the morning. I write even with a nice fountain pen in a paper journal, an absolutely wonderful, beautiful paper journal with wonderful paper. I love it. I often write by hand in the morning because it slows me down. It helps me think more carefully. But I do like to get those reflections into digital form afterward. I often dictate them right into Obsidian. After I write them, I'll go into Obsidian and start dictating the journal entry I just wrote. Why? Because that gives me a searchable and a reviewable record, and then my AI assistant can access it. Now, handwriting is valuable for the act of reflection, but the digital form is valuable for future use, further reflection. I think there's a place for both. I haven't yet found a system that I can just take a picture of my note and it interprets it, but no doubt that will be coming. Now, of course, this all calls for discernment. Some people are going to have some privacy concerns. Maybe you're one of those, and rightly so. I mean, if there's something you would not want to share with a tool, then don't share it. You need to use wisdom. You need to be selective. And you can use local tools if that makes sense for you. You can run LLMs, pretty good ones, locally on your hardware, depending on how powerful your computer is. And that's one way to use AI and use tools without sharing your information with some corporation or training the Borg out there. You need to find out what makes sense for you. The point is not reckless adoption, but the point is recognizing that your reflective life may contain more durable value than you previously realized. And that, I think, is a deeper point here. Journaling is not just about recording the past. It's not just about venting or unloading. It can be those things, but at its best, it's a disciplined way of processing your life in words. It helps you become more aware, more deliberate, and more aligned. Really, it creates a trustworthy process for reflection. And now, in the age of AI, that same process can also become a source of much greater leverage. Not because the machine replaces human work, but because it helps you revisit, organize, and act on the fruits of that work more effectively. So if you want to experiment with this, start simply. Keep a journal for a week. Write about what is occupying your mind. Write about what's frustrating you, what you're trying to solve, what you're excited about, and what keeps resurfacing. And then review those entries and see what patterns emerge. Again, if you haven't already, read my book, get my book and read it, The Compounding Mind. You can watch some videos on the daily review process. Just do that. It's super simple, but it's incredibly valuable. And then if you want, bring an AI assistant into that review and see whether it helps you notice what you may have missed. I think many people would be surprised by what becomes visible, because that has certainly been true for me. Now, what really began as a private discipline of reflection has now turned out to contain far more potential value than I ever understood. And AI did not create that value, but it did help me reveal it. So here's the question that I want to leave you with today. Now, what would change if your journal stopped being merely private reflection and became usable context for better thinking, better planning, and deeper self-understanding. Think about that. And go get busy. I'm Camden Busey. This has been the Squared Away Life podcast. I want to point you over to the website at squaredawaylife.com. Again, I mentioned it already, but if you subscribe to my email newsletter, for now you can download a pre-publication copy of my forthcoming book, The Compounding Mind, where I talk a lot about this very activity. But I want you to learn. I want you to grow. I want you to be able to attain your goals according to your values. I want you to reflect and become a more aware, disciplined, and reflective person. So here's one way to do that. So let's get squared away.